Warren Buffett is widely regarded as the greatest investor of all time. Over the course of his career, he has produced an astonishing 20% annual return through his company, Berkshire Hathaway, dating all the way back to 1965. This is a feat no other investor has come close to replicating on such a scale. When you study him in depth, you begin to realize just how unique and unrepeatable his path truly is. But how exactly did Buffett, often called the Oracle of Omaha, transform a modest starting sum into one of the largest fortunes in modern history? Let's trace his journey step by step, from his very first $1,000 to the snowball that has become more than $160 billion. Buffett's first $1,000. Warren Buffett's entrepreneurial drive showed itself remarkably early. Born in 1930 in Omaha, Nebraska, young Warren had a seemingly endless curiosity for money and business. At the age of 7, he stumbled across a library book titled 1,000 Ways to Make $1,000. The book left a profound mark on him, sparking the idea that wealth could be built systematically through business ventures and investments. As a child, Buffett dabbled in small hustles, selling packs of chewing gum, bottles of Coca-Cola, and magazines door to door. The profits were tiny, just a few pennies at a time. But the lessons about sales, persistence, and customer behavior were invaluable. By the age of 11, Buffett made his very first stock market investment. Having saved $114.75, he purchased 3 shares of Citi Service preferred stock at $38 each. Almost immediately, the price plunged to $27, testing the nerves of the young investor. Eventually, the stock rebounded to $40, and Buffett sold his shares for a small gain. However, his relief turned into regret when the price soared above $200 shortly afterward. This early experience taught him a lifelong lesson about the cost of impatience. Warren later reflected on that moment, saying that by buying those shares, he had become a capitalist, and it felt good. By high school, Buffett's business instincts had grown sharper. At 16, together with a friend, he bought a used pinball machine for $25 and installed it in a local barber shop. Customers could play while waiting for their haircut, and the coins quickly added up. Within months, they expanded to 3 locations. Eventually, they sold the business for $1,200, a tidy profit that contributed to Warren's growing savings. Even more lucrative were his multiple newspaper delivery routes while his family lived in Washington, D.C. By age 15, Buffett had saved $2,000, the equivalent of more than $35,000 in today's money. By the time he graduated high school, he had not only hit but comfortably surpassed that symbolic first milestone of $1,000, from $1,000 to $1 million. At 14, Buffett did something very unusual for a teenager. He bought 40 acres of farmland in Nebraska for $1,200, partnering with a local farmer who worked the land. By the time he completed college, he had already amassed close to $10,000, about $180,000 in today's terms. His trajectory shifted dramatically when, at age 20, Buffett read Benjamin Graham's classic book, The Intelligent Investor. Graham advocated value investing, buying companies for less than their intrinsic worth, and this framework instantly resonated with Buffett. Eager to learn directly from Graham, Buffett enrolled at Columbia Business School, where Graham taught. Graham's style was what Buffett later described as cigar butt investing, buying beaten-down companies that still had one last puff of value left in them. After completing his degree, Buffett worked briefly at Graham Newman Corporation, gaining hands-on experience in this method. In 1956, at only 25 years old, Buffett returned to Omaha and launched his own investment partnership. He gathered about $105,000 from family and friends, contributing just $100 of his own money. His fee structure was simple and fair. No management fee, no cut of the first 6% in annual returns, but 25% of profits beyond that hurdle. Armed with this capital, Buffett dove headfirst into Graham-style bargains. His partnership achieved an eye-popping 25.9% annual return, rapidly building his reputation. One famous early success came from the Sanborn Map Company, which produced insurance maps. While the map business was declining, the company owned a valuable investment portfolio worth far more than its market price. Buffett realized that the stock was being mispriced by the market and eventually bought up 43% of the company, forcing management to unlock the hidden value. This yielded his investors a 44% gain. But Buffett was already evolving. In 1964, when American Express was hammered by the salad oil scandal, its stock collapsed as investors panicked. Yet Buffett noticed that people were still using their Amex charge cards everywhere. He made a bold move, putting 40% of his partnership's capital into Amex stock. It was no longer just about finding cigar butts. It was about spotting quality businesses temporarily undervalued. This paid off handsomely, further cementing his reputation. By 1962, Buffett's share of the partnership had made him a millionaire. By his early 30s, he had transformed his initial $100 and his partner's trust into a seven-figure personal fortune. Enter Berkshire Hathaway. Around this time, Buffett encountered a struggling textile mill in New England named Berkshire Hathaway. Initially, it was a classic Graham-style investment. The stock was trading below its asset value. Buffett began buying shares. However, after a dispute with management, he bought enough shares to take control of the company outright, firing the CEO in frustration. Ironically, this was one of Buffett's few emotionally driven decisions, and one he later admitted was a mistake. The textile business was doomed, and taking control tied him to a failing operation. But this misstep would eventually provide him with the vehicle that transformed into today's Berkshire Hathaway, a global conglomerate worth hundreds of billions. The shift to wonderful companies. By the late 1960s, Buffett faced a problem. His partnership had grown so large that it was increasingly difficult to find enough cigar butts to invest in. The U.S. stock market was overheated, and bargains were rare. In 1969, he made the bold choice to close his partnership, returning money to his investors. From then on, he focused on using Berkshire Hathaway as his investment vehicle. This was also when Charlie Munger, Buffett's close friend and eventual vice chairman of Berkshire, became a pivotal influence. Munger urged Buffett to abandon the cigar butt approach and instead focus on buying wonderful companies at fair prices. Munger's philosophy was simple: a high-quality company with a strong brand, loyal customers, and pricing power could compound value for decades, far beyond what cheap, mediocre businesses could offer. The defining test came in 1972 with See's Candies, a beloved West Coast chocolate company. The asking price was $30 million, far above what Buffett would normally pay for a business making $2 million in profit annually. Reluctant but persuaded by Munger, Buffett negotiated the price down to $25 million and closed the deal. That purchase became legendary. Over the decades, See's generated more than $2 billion in profits for Berkshire, proving the value of investing in companies with durable competitive advantages, what Buffett calls moats. See's became the prototype for Buffett's future investments. Soon after, Buffett applied this philosophy to other major deals. In 1973, during a market downturn, he bought shares of the Washington Post for $10 million. That stake later grew to over $1 billion. In 1976, he stepped in to rescue GEICO during its financial troubles, eventually making it a cornerstone of Berkshire's insurance empire. By the 1980s, Buffett had fully embraced the wonderful company's strategy. His crown jewel investment came in 1988 with Coca-Cola. Buffett bought $1 billion worth of Coke shares, Berkshire's largest investment at the time. Coke's global brand and addictive product made it the epitome of a wide moat business. By the end of 1989, the stake had already doubled, and today it is worth more than $25 billion, paying Berkshire around $700 million annually in dividends. In 1986, Buffett officially became a billionaire at age 56, scaling up from billions to tens of billions. By the 1990s, Berkshire Hathaway had grown so large that Buffett joked he now had to look for elephants, massive acquisitions, since small deals no longer moved the needle. While he largely avoided the dot-com bubble of the late 1990s, earning criticism at the time for being out of touch, Buffett's patience was vindicated when the bubble burst, leaving Berkshire unscathed. In 2008, during the global financial crisis, Buffett stepped in as a lender of last resort. He invested in companies like Goldman Sachs and General Electric, structuring deals with generous terms for Berkshire. These not only rescued iconic businesses, but also made Berkshire billions, cementing Buffett's reputation as a steady hand in times of panic. The Apple Revolution. Perhaps the most surprising chapter in Buffett's later years was his investment in Apple. For decades, Buffett avoided technology stocks, arguing that he didn't understand them well enough. But in 2016, guided partly by his lieutenants Todd Combs and Ted Weschler, Berkshire began building a large stake in Apple. Buffett came to view Apple not as a tech company, but as a consumer products giant with an incredibly loyal customer base. The iPhone ecosystem created sticky recurring revenue, while Apple's cash reserves and pricing power fit perfectly into the Buffett playbook. By 2018, Berkshire owned 5% of Apple, having invested roughly $30 billion. That stake eventually swelled to be worth more than $160 billion, becoming Berkshire's single largest holding and one of Buffett's most profitable investments ever, from $1 billion to $160 billion. By the 2020s, Warren Buffett's net worth exceeded $100 billion, eventually climbing toward $165 billion as Berkshire's holdings continued to appreciate. What makes his story extraordinary is that he achieved this without starting a tech company, inheriting a fortune, or chasing speculative fads. His wealth is the pure product of disciplined investing, patience, and compounding over nearly 8 decades.